For millennia, humanity has looked heavenward for salvation and hellward for damnation. We've been taught to see evil as a singular entity, a fallen angel with horns and a fiery pitchfork. But those images are just the nursery rhymes of metaphysics. In the deep currents of esoteric and mystical traditions, the Gnostics, the Kabbalists, the yogis, the concept of the adversary is far more nuanced, terrifying, and intimate. It is not one enemy, but 8 distinct spiritual obstacles, psychological traps, and cosmic forces that actively challenge and often halt the journey of human consciousness. To understand these hidden devils is to understand the true battlefield of the soul. Let's begin the descent and unmask the forces that oppose your evolution. The ego devil, the internal prison. The very first devil we must confront lives not in the abyss but between your ears. Esoteric psychology, particularly the teachings of figures like Gurdjieff and Uspensky, names this the egoid. This is not just healthy self-esteem, it is the sum total of your involuntary mechanical behaviors, unexamined reactions, and the illusion of a single coherent personality. The egoid is a multi-headed beast built from your attachments, vanity, self-pity, and accumulated fears. It convinces you that your highest goals are merely satisfying its lowest desires. Its primary weapon is identification. Think of it. When you become fully identified with a negative thought, I am a victim or I am a failure, the egoid takes over the controls. You are no longer acting. You are being acted upon. This mechanism forces you into a loop of suffering, replaying the same emotional reactions indefinitely. Furthermore, the egoid creates fragmentation. It ensures you never have a unified will by splitting you into a million tiny contradictory I's. The I that wants to be spiritual, the I that wants revenge, the I that wants to stay comfortable. This internal civil war guarantees that the precious energy needed for true spiritual work is wasted in constant chaotic conflict. To challenge the egoid is to challenge the very foundation of who you believe yourself to be. The devil of deception, the Archons, the cosmic jailers. Next, we ascend to the lore of the Gnostics, whose teachings suggest that the devil's work is less about tempting you to sin and more about trapping you in a fake reality. They spoke of the Archons, not as demons, but as sub-rulers or interdimensional gatekeepers of the material universe, which they called the Kanoma, the void. The Archons are the ultimate bureaucrats of existence. Their primary function is to enforce Ahriman, the rigid, determined force of fate and karma. They maintain the illusion that life is purely physical and governed by mechanical laws, preventing the human soul from recognizing its origin in the pleroma, the fullness of divine light. Their greatest power is deception through distraction. They fill our world with incessant chatter, false gods, consumerism, and manufactured crises, anything to keep our energy focused externally. By keeping human beings distracted, fearful, and engaged in drama, the Archons ensure the prison of matter remains securely locked and the divine spark within remains dormant and unused. To them, ignorance is stability. The adversary of materialism, Ahriman, the spirit of cold reason. In the dualistic systems of Zoroastrianism and subsequent esoteric schools like anthroposophy, the dark principle Ahriman Angra Mainyu operates with a chilling strategy. Unlike the more passionate devil, Lucifer, who inflates the ego with pride and fiery desire, Ahriman seeks to paralyze the soul with cold, calculated doubt. Ahriman's influence encourages an excessive, suffocating reliance on purely external knowledge, logic, and quantifiable data. He seeks to convince humanity that our inner life, intuition, morality, spiritual experience is merely a byproduct of random chemical processes. His goal is to strip the universe of meaning and warmth, reducing existence to nothing more than a mechanical, impersonal interaction of atoms. His deepest existential threat lies in spiritual amnesia. Ahriman aims to root the human soul so thoroughly in the physical world that it denies any existence before birth or after death. If the soul believes it is only a fleeting accident, its capacity for spiritual will and sacrifice is drastically minimized, and the journey toward true freedom is abandoned. Ahriman represents the triumph of the machine over the human heart. The temptress devil, Liptimoth, the untamed shadow. Drawn from Babylonian myth and later formalized in Kabbalistic lore, Lipit is a crucial, non-traditional adversary. She is often cast as the first woman who rejected submission to Adam, representing not original sin but original independence and the untamed feminine. Esoterically, Lilith embodies the seduction of the shadow self. She is the consolidated force of all repressed desires, raw sexual energy, anger, and fierce independence that society or religion has forced into the unconscious. When these powerful, natural forces are continually suppressed, they do not vanish. They build up immense chaotic power and inevitably erupt as the Lilithian impulse destructive, obsessive, and compulsively addictive behaviors. The challenge of Lilith is profound. It is the battle for integration. The esoteric practitioner must face this entity not to fight or condemn it, but to acknowledge and discipline this raw, primal power. By transforming chaotic energy into conscious, potent spiritual will, the seeker reclaims the power that was once deemed forbidden. The devil of chaos, Karanzan, the dweller on the threshold. In the high-stakes ceremonial magic developed by figures like Aleister Crowley, Karanzan is a terrifying entity. The dweller on the threshold, who guards the very gateway to supreme spiritual realization, the abyss. Karanzan is not a tempter. It is the absolute personification of chaos, dispersion, and utter delusion. It represents the shattering of the ego into meaningless fragments. When a seeker attempts to bridge the vast abyss, the gap between the personal ego and the higher self, they must first be stripped bare. If the seeker is not fully prepared, Corazon will exploit this stripping process to scatter their consciousness into madness and irreversible psychological breakdown. The only successful strategy against this entity is one of perfect self-sacrifice and unwavering concentration, proving that the integrated, unified will is stronger than the void of all nonsense. It is the ultimate test of sanity and commitment. The devil of anti-creation, the Qliphoth, the shells of existence. From the dense philosophical structure of the Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, we find the Qliphoth, meaning literally shells or husks. They represent the absolute esoteric devils of existence, not as creations but as cosmic waste products. The Qliphoth are the shadow side of the tree of life. They are the remnants of unbalanced divine force, the shells that once contained the light but were corrupted because they lacked the proper vessels of reception. They are the inverse of the divine attributes, Sephirot. Where the divine spheres embody kindness and wisdom, the Qliphoth embody cruelty and idiocy. To engage with the Qliphoth is to face the source of spiritual corruption, obsession, and imbalance. They form the literal framework of the anti-universe, existing through stagnation and spiritual rot. They are the ultimate gravitational pull towards psychic darkness, challenging the seeker to navigate the darkest dimensions without being consumed by their unbalanced force. The devil of repression, the shadow, the unclaimed self. In the 20th century, Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung formalized a psychological entity that functions precisely as an internal devil, the shadow. This is not a mythical entity, but the personal unconscious counterpart to the egoid. The shadow is composed of everything we find unacceptable, repulsive, or morally inferior about ourselves. All the dark traits, fears, and urges we forcefully repress. The shadow only becomes demonic when it is ignored. It builds energy in the unconscious, and when triggered, erupts in uncontrollable, irrational behavior, rage, prejudice, or bitter cynicism. The most insidious work of the shadow is projection, where we see the faults and moral darkness we deny in ourselves reflected clearly in the external world or in other people. The esoteric solution, according to Jung, is not to banish the shadow, but to perform integration, making the unconscious conscious, thereby neutralizing its autonomous power. The devil of stagnation, Kundalini shadow, the dormant serpent. Finally, from Eastern and Tantric mysticism, we examine the shadow of Kundalini, the coiled serpent energy, the ultimate life force residing at the base of the spine. While Kundalini's ascent leads to enlightenment, its dormancy and corruption create a unique adversary, spiritual stagnation. When the Kundalini is trapped, the nadis energy channels remain clogged by massive amounts of ego attachment, past trauma, and emotional blockage. This results in a life of chronic spiritual inertia, obsessive lower chakra fears, and pervasive anxiety. Furthermore, if the energy is prematurely or improperly forced to rise, a catastrophic error, it can manifest as terrifying psychic phenomena, crippling mental disorders, or destructive physical impulses. The unpurified, chaotic energy itself becomes the devil, violently attacking the unprepared vessel.